Okay, so I had to edit that out. But yeah, my poor oldest, at one point, while I was away and stuff like that, he missed lunch and he was so hungry that he decided, okay, well, there's fresh berries all over the place. Just go scavenging and stuff like that. Okay, fine. And he was so hungry that he was picking off, the wild berries, the blackberries, raspberries, and stuff like that, and just shoving them in his mouth. He didn't quite pay attention, and there was a stink bug on one. And so now he, anytime he tastes one of those berries and stuff like that, he constantly has that memory taste in his mouth. Um, and I feel horrible for him, but at the same time I laugh because, yeah, gallows humor. Um, but, they all went through that. And I mean, there was no saving a plate. There was no putting something away for later. It's like, no, you fit and you conform to these specific rules, and that's it. Um, and when he was at school, he'd end up, my youngest, 16, he'd end up not only eating whatever, his school lunch was, but then anything else that anyone else didn't want to eat. You know, uh, it's like certain kids have certain foods they don't like to eat, or they don't eat a lot, and he just, it's like they didn't want it, so he ate it because he didn't know when his next meal was. So he had to unlearn a lot of those kind of habits. He had to unlearn the idea that he wasn't allowed to talk about his feelings, that he wasn't safe enough to talk about them, that his voice mattered. And so because I allow him to have a safe space to be himself, he stopped having a mask. And so when anything goes wrong, like he can't go to school because it's too overstimulating, I get punished for it. And I won't force him to be that way. Because he was already telling the high school that, even if we had a special program and, where he was allowed to go to safe zones and stuff like that. I mean, I have a recording of a phone conversation we had, and it was heartbreaking because I had to keep him on the phone. I had to keep him, walking to the vie scolaire, which is one of the offices. And I had to keep him walking there to make sure that he was surrounded by safe people, that he wasn't left on his own, because otherwise he'd already told them repeatedly that, if he got too intensely overstimulated and went into too much of a panic, he'd jump off the roof. Now, it's only a 3, maybe 4-story building. It's not deadly per se, but still. um, and he's a big kid. He's taller than I am, he's heavier than I am, and he can do damage. And he was already to the point of potentially, hurting others if he gets into a blind panic. And with how the last couple of, well, most of this year have gone out with the Macron incident, there was no way that he could be in school. Not with all the protests and the manifestations and all the angst and anxiety, and plus the school isn't too far from where his father works. Um, Overstimulation of having to walk the kilometers from his school to where the bus stop would be to be able to catch the bus, the almost 40 minutes ride home. It was just, it wasn't going to be possible. And it's an internal, so, you sleep there during the week. And he tried. But there was all kinds of other complications too, and I wasn't going to force it. And then literally like clockwork, every couple of weeks my ex would cause a new incident, and it would reset the clock on his healing. And then what help we got from the courts, it wasn't help. It didn't fit any of his needs, and it didn't take into account any of my needs. And it didn't even take into account his brothers, who were witnesses. Well, they're adults, so they don't count. Yeah, but they were still witnesses. They still have their own testimony, but they don't count. So everything's set against me. And if I fail at keeping him alive, and right now I'm the only one who can keep him calm, not because I have control over him, but because I'm an anchor. I'm a safe zone. And recently he came close to almost attacking me. Not because he wants to, Not because he's a bad person, but his brain just kind of flipped because there was too many intrusive thoughts. He got up too fast and he just kind of lost circulation, lost control, and I saw his hand going into that position that it gets into. So I held still. I was quiet. I didn't move. And I waited. And then he breathed it out. He was able to get back to lucidity, but it was close. And then there was a second time where it didn't get that far, but the heat's been intense, and he's at his breaking point. And each court appearance has been worse and worse. So much aggression and trauma. I mean, the first time we went there, my ex's lawyer, when it was her turn to speak, she launches into him like he's a 34-year-old adult who's been convicted of previous crimes, who's being accused of, I don't know, something violent and stuff like that. When he wasn't even 16 yet. He was almost 16, and he had suicidal ideation with cutting, and she's just launching into him like it's normal to attack a kid like that. And then the next court appearance, which was an appeals court, oh God. At one point, we disagreed with something, and I'm sitting over here. He's sitting behind me in the furthest corner away. I've got a translator next to me, a little old French lady who had told in the corridor, what the situation was, how severe it is. And we had our two lawyers there. We had my ex and his lawyer there, someone else over there for one of the government organizations. And then the judge and the person doing the typey. And at one point, my ex says something, and both me and my son don't agree. So we just raise our hand. That's it. Calmly, politely raise our hand, notifying that, we don't agree with something. We're not asking for attention. We're not asking to speak. We're just saying, we don't agree. The dude, the judge, completely ignores me, launches directly into my son, who's already having a panic attack, who the panic is getting more and more and more. And everybody goes silent, watching him. I'm watching him because I need to know, what are his body language? What is his micro expressions? Does he need me? Can he calm himself down? What do I need to do? Because I know the signs. I grew up in the DC metro area. I know how not to be a victim. And I also know how to look for damage and potential dangers. And I've worked with, ex-military with PTSD, cptsd, or current military. I've worked with all different types of personalities, all different age groups. I've just trying to go to work on the metro, you had to avoid all the different people that were literally released and left homeless after the insane asylum was closed down. So I'm used to all different types of intense situations. But the lady next to me was the only one that immediately moved, went right to him, and I'm going, oh God. And it was a very split-second thing, and I follow almost immediately right after her, but she has just enough time to go past me, sit down real close into him, acting like a little old French lady, grandmother kind of thing, trying to calm and soothe him. And I see his hand, and his hand is, and he's got long nails. And I saw his hand, and I'm like, nope, we're not doing this. And if I'd have been 10 seconds slower, he'd have throat punched her. That's not normal. That's not my son. And that's not me, blinded, whatever. That's me knowing what trauma is. That's me knowing what the signs are. He had to be escorted out. He sat in the hallway with his brother, calmed down. While we finished up the thing, everyone was real silent. Everyone was like, oh, maybe this is real. Like, no, duh. And I hate it. He's too emotionally intelligent for the people around him. The majority of the adults, they don't get it. They're too set on being perfect. They're too set on conforming, on the bourgeois, keeping up with the Joneses. And they don't have the same depth as he does. When he went to the ASAP, ASAP, when he went to that program, it was good for the other kids that were there that didn't know why they were suffering from suicidalation, or why they had an idea but it wasn't concrete. My son knew it. He knew so much more about what was going on. He could have been an intern with them, and he was younger than them. And all of my kids have had experience with the mental health care here. And the people here are not what he needs, and they keep triggering him. And then this last court appearance, we had 3 judges. The main one from the first time, and then 2 others for the family law. And each one's just ripping into him. And then he refuses to sit in the main part of the trial, and they're ripping into me, making it me the one that's causing endangerment because he's not in school, he's not socializing. But how? How am I supposed to do that? I've got nothing. I've got no real help. Any of the help that I have sabotages. So I'm doing the best I can, but my hands are tied. So that's why I need help. We got to get out of here. We need an intervention. That means we need someone who is qualified, who speaks English, whether it's in France or not, but preferably someone who is a native English speaker, who doesn't have as much of a relationship with the French culture, because it carries over into how people behave, and it's going to trigger my son. And the majority of his intellectual side goes into the French system because of how he was raised, but his emotional side is with me in English, because I'm the only one that talked about emotions. I'm the only one that gave him a free space to be that way, because that's what I do. And so that's what he feels comfortable with, and that's where his language skills are for that type of situation. He needs some place safe where he can get the words out and speak his truth. And it needs to be with professionals that can give messages to the courts and go, yeah, it's not made up. It's real. And I need that too. Because it's not just my ex. It's all of the government agencies that I'm dealing with. It's all encompassing. It's too big for just one person, and I need help. So I'm looking for professionals. I'm looking for people to get the word out to the right professionals so that they can help. I mean, I even tried contacting the lawyers for Johnny Depp because there's a lot of slander and toxicity that's similar to their case. And there's a lot of similarities to the Britney Spears case. And there's a lot of similarities to Bruce Willis and his aphasia. And I mean, there's even the royals. You know, you got the one set of royals on one side and you got the other on the other, and they're calling out all the toxicity. We've got so much happening, and it's just too big for one person. And I'm doing it alone. And if anything happens, they're going to try and pin it on me. And if I get put either into jail or a mental institution, there's no coming back. It'll kill me. My health is too deteriorated, and they won't believe me. And I've already sacrificed too much. I deserve to have a life too. I deserve to have this over. And my boys deserve a whole lot better. And they haven't seen my mom in 15 years. They deserve to see her. She deserves better. I just want this to be over, and I want to go home. And home is somewhere safe where we get to be us. It's not necessarily where we've been. And my goal is to get to Ireland, because it's the only Anglophone country in the EU. And we're EU citizens. And they have healthcare that can help us. We deserve to heal. We deserve to have a life. And if 16 wants to continue on the higher education path that he was forced onto, he'd make a damn fine engineer. He wants to go into environmental engineering. He's got some great ideas. Especially when I told him about some of the stuff that NASA's been interested in. Like water on the moon and stuff like that. I mean, he had some great ideas. And he likes the concept of quantum physics as well, and other aspects of physics, and just, he has potential to do a lot. But what does it matter if he's pushed not only to suicide, but murder, suicide, and potential ending up in the news like all those other people that go and big rampaging killing sprees? That's not him. But that's what they're pushing him to become. And every country is all, oh, war on terror. Except they're breeding terrorists in their own country as well as in other countries. And I'm fighting that. So I need some allies. And I'm going to stop here because the light is fading. So yeah, go Biggie, go Biggie, go Biggie. Ha! So yeah, we need help. We need a lot of help. Because it's not just a question of getting us out of here. There's a lot of damages that have been done by my ex, by the hospital, by LUDAF, by the social workers, by the schools, by the police. You know, I went to check up on the case when my middle son was hit by a drunk driver while he was on a scooter. And I asked them, you know, what's going on? Because my ex wouldn't fill me in. And for whatever reason, he told me how to defraud the welfare system here. I was like, why would you tell me that? You know, telling me how to do it, and that it would only take, 10 years before they actually caught me. And I'm like, I'm here because I want to know what's going on with my son's case. It has nothing to do with this. And I've tried reporting crimes before, and they're just like, yeah, no. And the court is horribly, it's biased. It's not neutral at all. And our rights as humans, as women and children, as European citizens, as French citizens, as American citizens, all of our human rights are being violated. And I'm exhausted, and it's damaging me. And I don't know how much longer I can go on, because it's just too much. So, yeah. So that's why I'm making these videos. So yeah. Thanks for listening.